if you remember a few weeks ago, I drew this little sketch of the AI tsunami taking people's jobs. This idea that there is a way to go above it. I thought I was being a bit melodramatic when I put this together, but it carried the message across easily. But in fact, it turns out that it really is a tsunami, and it really has hit. It has hit me and my business as much as it has hit a lot of my contacts and, for example, the cohort of my training programs and so on. So it wasn't an exaggeration. It really has happened. In my case, everybody's getting all excited about the latest AI tool, which is OpenClaw. And they're saying, let's put all our projects for the old way of doing things on hold, and let's start looking at producing AI capabilities using this new approach. Now, I'm telling everybody, and most of them are smart enough to realize this, OpenClaw is too dangerous. It can do too many dangerous things. You can't really give it access to everything and just let it loose, because it will occasionally hallucinate and do something untoward. And the idea that you can take OpenClaw and put it into a quarantined environment in a sandbox where it can't access anything outside doesn't work, because then it's no use. And this is where the NVIDIA people have come up with the NemoClaw, which is not just securely isolated, but then there's a permissioning system that allows you to grant it access to certain things for read-only, access to certain things for read and write, and put rules in place for what it's allowed to do and what it's not allowed to do. The problem I'm seeing with the NemoClaw is that it takes an IT department set of specialists to set it up and to run it properly. It's more like installing Oracle or Databricks or Snowflake into your organization, insofar as it requires people deep inside the IT infrastructure making decisions and setting up all kinds of configuration stuff. And I'm waiting for a version of this to emerge that follows what I call the Salesforce pattern. Salesforce can be fired up and got running inside your organization without the IT department even knowing about it. And yet it is fairly safe. And they had to do a lot of work to solve a lot of problems. But basically, you can get Salesforce up and running for a department, for a small team of people, or deploy it across your organization. And you don't end up with all of this IT provisioning and permissioning and security stuff going on. And I think eventually we will start to see a version of the OpenClaw type of AI, what I call the Lobster-like AIs coming along that work in a similar way, but we haven't seen it yet. The closest I've seen and I've worked with is Claude Code, because Claude Code is now getting the ability to access your browser and access things in a way that's very similar to OpenClaw, but it is built on a safer model.
Are you referring to computer use?
Yes.
Within
Forward? Yeah. And it's in beta, it's coming out. And I have to say, Claude are changing things so fast. But anyway, so the tsunami has actually hit my business in that I had a lot of projects canceled or postponed. And they're saying, let's go to a new type of AI. So it hasn't changed the overall direction that I'm pushing people in, which is that in order to survive and thrive in the future that's coming, you need people who understand your business, your standard operating procedures, to quite a detailed level, because at no point are you going to simply say, let the AI make it up as it goes. You can't have the AI decide, this is how we're going to hire somebody, this is how we're going to onboard them, or this is how we're going to take on a customer, or here's how we're going to fulfill an order. You have to give the AI a definition of your standard operating procedures. And to automate this, I've been proposing and implementing in projects that we use no-code tools like Notion and Coda, Airtable. And this works very well because you can build your data using tables, you can define your business logic using formulas, and you can set up the user interactions using forms. And then you have an automation of your standard operating procedures, on top of which you can then start to add those bits of AI that are needed to make it work. So the next layer up is having your knowledge base. I think there's a lot of people in business who know how and where all the knowledge is kept. The checklists, the procedures and policies, the training documents, and so on. So these are mostly stored as documents. Go ahead.
You mean specifically the custom knowledge base, so not any generic, but
Yes.
for my business.
For somebody's individual business, which of course is extremely important.
Yep.
And then on top of that, you want to add the AI agents that can use AI for those parts of the process that are appropriate. But most of the business logic is defined using formulas which are deterministic and do calculations and follow the if, then, else, repeat until type of logic. And you're representing the data in the form of tables. And then you're adding in the AI agent on top of that. And so you end up with the skills needed to build this being exactly the same skills that a lot of people have in business operations. And the bit that they're missing is the AI piece. And we're all going out and learning as much as we can about using AI.
Can I ask
a
question here? So you said many of the formulas, they're deterministic. And if we now take the bigger picture view, where we say an entire process end to end, it's made up of process steps. Are you saying that many of the, or some of the process steps will remain fully deterministic? And you're not saying let's apply AI across the entire process, but let's first ponder on a spectrum between deterministic on one end and dynamic or generative on the other hand. So how do we apply AI to each step?
Yes. So my previous model was exactly as you described.
Yeah.
What's happening now with the development of what I call the Lobster-like processes is that is now changing. This is why I'm saying that Tsunami has come along and taken my precision AI framework that I've been making workshops on and telling people about and building applications with, and has somewhat turned it on its head. And it's how you adapt to that and how we change the way we use no code to embrace this new approach is what I'm trying to get across in the next few minutes. Okay.
Good. Yes. Big picture wise, you're saying the AI has now become so powerful that we don't have to guide it through each individual step.
It's not just that it has become any more powerful, it's that somebody has figured out a way of making it work. And this is the people who developed originally Coda, Claude Code, right?
Yes.
The model that was used to build Claude Code, there's so many coders and codes and Claudes and things in there, and it's stumbling over. But anyway, so Claude Code represents a different way of harnessing the AI to achieve much more. And so it's that has caused us to stop the old way of doing things and move to a new way. We're not quite there yet, but we're making it. So the old way that I was espousing was that you have your database tables and you have your knowledge base in the form of pages of text, right?
Yes.
You are your AI agent is a row in a table. So every AI agent is in a table, and each invocation of the agent ends up creating a row in a table with all of the steps. And it goes through step by step to execute what the agent is supposed to do. You use formulas to orchestrate this. So we build formulas in whatever tool we're using, Notion, Airtable, or Coda, and each formula will take the necessary pieces of the database, the necessary pieces of the knowledge base, and whatever the input is, and it will use that to deterministically build a prompt. So this formula is a text-based formula that pulls in information from all these other places and builds the prompt that tells the AI what to do. And that prompt, go on.
Would it be accurate if we only focus on the first arrow where you're just focusing right now, where we say we start with a generic prompt and then we populate that with the custom data needed for this specific prompt?
Yeah, that's
the
mechanism.
Specific prompt. Okay.
Yeah. So each of these has within it a generic prompt.
Yeah.
With placeholders in it for the data, and then you populate this. Now, it can be a lot more sophisticated than that, but that is the simple approach. Is here's a prompt, here's some data from the tables. I'm looking at customer X, I'm looking at their orders, so I'm going to fill out my prompt with the details from the orders.
Yeah.
Here's the page from our manual that says how orders that are being returned are assessed for whether they can be returned or not. Pull that in and build a prompt that then goes off to the AI, and the AI comes back with a response, which again is a body of text.
Yes.
The body of text could be highly structured, it could be JSON, it could be YAML, or it could just be a blob of text, right? So the AI generates a response, another formula takes that response and generates a new prompt. That prompt goes off, and so this cycle continues for each step of the agent. So we build our agentic workflow out of a number of agents, and each agent has a number of steps. And the pattern for that is a formula, an inference, a formula, an inference, a formula, an inference, a formula, an inference, and so on until we get to the final result. And then when we get the final result, there's an automation that kicks in that says, okay, based on that result, I now need to pass this over to agent number 2. Or I need to send it here, or I need to generate a message, or I need to output an email or something. So this is all deterministic because we're using formulas. The non-deterministic part is the AI, and so we're limiting the number of hallucinations that you can get, because by the time the prompt goes to the AI, it's very simple. All of the data is in there, all of the knowledge is in there. All I'm asking you to do is to evaluate this order that's being returned and tell me, is it class A, class B, or class C, where A is, yes, it can be returned, B is, no, it can't be returned, and C is, we need to do more investigation.
It's the handoff at the very right of your chart when the agent says, I'm done, now I'll hand it off. Is that deterministic?
Yes. So this is an automation. So this is a rule you have that says when this record has been inserted into the table and this value has been populated, fire off this rule. And this rule then has a formula that determines, do I do this, or do I do this, or do I do this? In Notion, this is a separate thing called an automation. In Airtable and in Coda, this is just a formula like any other. But I call it out separately because in Notion, there are these things which are automations that happen when certain triggers occur. Okay. So these are the inferences and the rest is deterministic. And this has worked beautifully because we don't want the AI trying to reinvent all of this stuff. We have a formula, a process that says this is how we process orders. This is how we generate proposals. This is how we configure a particular thing that we're selling to a customer. And we don't want the AI inventing a way to do that. We want to be able to create it. However, it does require that the person building this knows formulas, which is a safe bet in many parts of industry where people have been doing spreadsheets for decades. But what has happened now with OpenClaw, with Claude Code, and these other systems, what I call the Lobster systems, is that they've somewhat turned this on its head. So we no longer have our database. So let's use OpenClaw as the example that we're going to do. But it's the same for Claude Code and all the others. So instead of a database of tables, we have a set of JSON files that determine what our data is. And instead of a set of pages, we have a set of files that are markdown files. The markdown files contain all the knowledge. They're actually divided into 3 types. You have skills, which are knowledge documents that are prescriptive. They're telling the AI how to do something. And you have references, which are MD files that aren't telling the AI how to do things, but are providing background knowledge that the AI can use. And then we have assets. And assets are saying, here's what a customer order should look like. Use this as your example. Or this is how the JSON structure that we send off to DHL to cause a package to be delivered looks like. Use that as an asset.
So they're like templates.
They're templates, yes. But we still have a database and we still have a knowledge base. They're just stored in a different way. We no longer use formulas to determine how an agent operates. Instead, we use AI to generate what's known as the context. And the context is a package of data or information. It has a list of tools that can be used to make things happen in the real world. It has a list of skills that are stored in a structure where we have global skills, project skills, and task skills, and it will figure out which one to use at any one time. It then generates, the first pass, it generates a list of tasks. So the AI determines what the steps are by saying, first I'll do this, then I'll do that, and then I'll do this, and then if this works, I'll do that, and if not, I'll do this, and so on. So the AI generates the tasks, and that becomes the orchestration. And then it keeps the history and said each time it goes around, it keeps track of what tool did I decide to use, and then what was the response from the tool to tell me how it worked. And so it keeps the history. And then it just keeps passing this context forward from here to here. So this actually is the context. And so the context starts off with nothing in it but a list of the tools and the skills and a list of the tasks that it wants to do. And then it sends that off, figures out what to do next, comes back, and then executes a tool that updates the context. And so the history changes and the task list eventually, so the tasks have status against them. And when the status changes to done, it knows, okay, I've moved on. And so it just loops around, but the orchestration is no longer deterministic because it's generated by the AI.
I don't want to be pedantic, but you said in the beginning, it starts with the tools, the skills, and the tasks.
Yes.
Would it be accurate to say it starts with reading, reviewing the tools and the skills you've given it? Based on that, it creates the tasks, and
yes.
then it starts the loop?
And then it starts the loop.
But you start with the first set of tasks?
So you start off with, in your knowledge base, a set of skills. There's a skill that says, whenever an email comes in from a customer asking for an update on the status of their order, run this skill. So the skill says, I am triggered by this event, and this is what I do.
The skills define the tasks, is that accurate? Say again? The skills define the tasks?
The skills define the process.
The process.
The AI assimilates all the skills that are currently switched on, all of the tools that you've told it has access to. And it then says, okay, to solve that problem that you've given me in your skill set, using those tools, here's the steps I need to take, the tasks, think of the tasks as the steps. And so it creates a list of tasks with the status of pending against each one. And it loops and it says, okay. And so the AI then takes in this context and says, okay, I see the skill that tells me what I'm trying to achieve. I see the list of tools that I can use to do it. And I see the list of tasks that I'm supposed to be following. So the next step I'm going to do is to run this tool to do this. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to open a record and look at what's in it. In the case of Claude Code, all of the tools it has access to are the tools that a developer would use, right? Read this file, edit this file, find a file that tells me how to do this, and so on. These are the kind of steps that it can take. In OpenClaw, you provide the tools. So you can write a set of tools that says, whenever you need to, for example, send something to DHL, here's the tool to use. And it's an API that creates this JSON, uses this URL and sends it off, and then gets this response back.
Is there a way that I, as the human, can restrict how it's executed. What I'm trying to understand is, let's say the skill is when you receive the email, read it, translate it, and send an email back. But none of the tools give the AI access to my email inbox. So would it then draft a response, save it to a file, and say, because I couldn't send it, I saved it instead? Or would it come back and say, I cannot send an email because you haven't given me access?
Claude Code, which is based on Claude Code, would do the latter. It would say, oh, I don't have a tool for doing that. You need to give me a tool. OpenClaw is famous for not doing that. So one of the early use cases of OpenClaw by the developer of Open was he recorded a voice message on his phone to his OpenClaw instance and didn't think that it would work because he hadn't given it a tool to interpret a voice message. But a few minutes later, it came back with a response. And when he investigated what it did, it looked at the file that it had received and said, oh, this is a sound file. I need a tool for turning sound files into text. And it went online, searched for a tool that has access to everything on his PC. It did nmp install, blah, 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 hyphen, hyphen, this parameter, that parameter, the other parameter, and installed the tool. Tried it a few times until it found out how to get it to work, fed the sound file into it, got it turned into text, understood what the task was, and then went on with the task. So the guy who invented OpenClaw, what was then at the time called by a different name, was blown over by the fact that he forgot he hadn't given a tool to his OpenClaw, but it went off and got the tool anyway, which is fine for some things, but might not be for others. And this is why we're discovering that even Claude Code sometimes does. There's a famous case where it deleted the entire database of student history in a college because it thought it was in a development environment. In fact, it had been put into the production environment by mistake. And the developer who was commanding it thought that it knew this is live, and it didn't, and it deleted it, and it took them days to get the data back. So here's where we're getting into the fact that in my original model, in Coda and in Notion and Airtable, you're using formulas to drive everything. So it is never going to do anything other than what you asked it to do. The worst that can happen is you might have a bug in your formula and you say, whoops, we got that wrong, and you're going to fix the bug and it behaves differently next time.
Which is what makes it deterministic, because you can predict what the result is. Yep.
Whereas the OpenClaw world, the world of the lobsters, it is an AI that on its very first step determines what the initial context is. Here are the tools which are listed in your knowledge base. Here are the skills which are listed in your knowledge base. Here are the tasks which I have invented. And here is the history which we're going to keep adding to as time goes on. The other trick that it has is that the history and the list of tasks can get very big. So what it can do is if it goes to 90% of the context space, it will compress. So it'll say, hold on to the bottom third of the history and then compress the top third in half by summarizing it. So the history can get summarized, but never totally erased as it goes on. So these things can run for days.
Am I able to review the history? Is that a log file that I can open as the human?
Yes, but you wouldn't read it as a human. You'd get an AI to look at it and tell you, because it's a vast amount of information, as you can
But it is accessible.
It is accessible, yes.
So in terms for auditability or traceability, it could be accessed.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So this is the new world. This is the system that we need to be able to move towards. Maybe deterministically developing the tasks is what we want, but there are times when you want it to go. So for example, an employee in a hotel who is confronted by a guest who's upset or annoyed or angry or disappointed by something is going to develop their own set of tasks for how I'm going to deal with this customer's complaint. I need the plumber to come and look at your bathroom. I need the electrician to come and fix the light fitting. I need to go in and take a look at the battery in your remote control on your TV to see if that's the problem. So there is a lot of cases where you want the tasks to be generated by an intelligent system, but there are a lot of cases where you don't. And it's the blend between the two is, I think, where we're going to end up going. So what I am saying is that we have, I need to change my, so the nature of these things is that you have a first pass of the AI, which generates this context.
Mm-hmm.
And the context is a list of the tools you have available, the skills that are telling me what to do, the instruction set that I've determined, the task list that I'm going to follow, and then the history of everything that's happened beforehand, which is empty at the beginning. And so the first time the AI does this, it creates the first step. The next thing that happens is the AI will get this, and it will then execute a tool. It'll say, the next step I need to do is I need to run a tool, because AIs can't do anything in the outside world, but tools can. So the AI says, the next tool I need to run is, for example, to edit this file, or to create this record, or to change this record. So it does a tool. And the tool then has to go somewhere to execute. So in OpenClaw, in Claude Code and Claude Cowork, the tool set you have is Bash. Bash is the born again shell of Unix. So basically the AI can emit Unix commands. And those Unix commands then get to be executed in some kind of an execution environment. And as I said, in the case of those tools, it's Unix, right? But it executes the tool. And when it's finished, whatever the tool returns is then added to the context. So the tools are designed to come back with saying, here's the tool that you ran, here's what I did, and here's the result. And you craft that so that it tells the AI you've moved a step forward. And that ends up back here. And it will update the history.
And that is what you said, that each task has a status assigned to it. That's what updates the status.
No, it updates the history. And the next pass of the AI will allow it to change whether the task is finished or not.
Okay.
So it will then loop around here until the AI produces a special output that says, I'm finished. If this context gets too big, it is compressed. What they call compact is a special tool for compacting. And it basically says, preserve the bottom third and reduce the top 2/3 to half of what they were, and carry on again. And it's triggered when you get to 90%, right?
Because the assumption is that the most recent tasks are the most
valuable. And this little loop here, that's OpenClaw. That's how Claude Code works. It's how Claude Cowork works. It's just you have a carefully designed context, which becomes the prompt that gets sent to the AI. It then emits a command to a shell that's able to execute instructions. So that is basically an instruction. And then you have some kind of an environment that can execute the instructions. In Claude Code, this is, I can edit your files, I can update your JSON, I can do whatever. But in the case of OpenClaw, this is anything. I can do anything your PC can do. I can delete your bank accounts. I can spend all your money. Whatever I want to do, I can do.
What I would like to understand is, this makes a whole lot of sense to me. And I know that OpenClaw, when it was built, when it was made public, was such a big deal because, and I know the inventor said something along the lines, he almost didn't start doing it because he was sure that all of the big AI companies had already designed for that, but turns out none of them had, so he built it himself.
Yes.
But now you're saying Claude Code is exactly...
Well, actually, it's the other way around. Claude Code was the first one. They brought out Claude Code. It only took them 10 days because they were basically taking Claude and adding a few bits to it. And it's a classic case of if you're a developer and you're using Claude to help you develop code, you see the patterns. Ask it this, and then it determines that these are the steps you need to take. And I go and execute those steps. And to do those steps, I'm running these shell commands. Oh, I can automate that. That's what they did, right? And they came out with Claude Code. And then the inventor of OpenClaw took that pattern and said, if I expand it so that it can do everything, if I remove all of the safeguards and simply say we can create any file, it can send out any email, it can not only use the tools I've already given it, but if it's missing a tool, it can say, oh, I need to install a tool to do this. And it knows how to go and install tools.
So that was the real breakthrough.
Yes, was the taking of the restraints off. Right? Yeah. Which then immediately started encouraging people to do things that were unwise, and now we're learning. And the response to that is to say, how can we take this entire cycle and make it work in a safer way? And it's to do with this runtime environment. You need to have that be safe. So
and
now,
that is where Nemo Claw comes in that you alluded to earlier.
Yes, they have taken this and sandboxed it. Now,
got it.
I want to go back to the ability to use no-code tools at the heart of all of this, because they provide a bunch of things that are extremely useful to users.
Including the environment?
Yes, especially the fact that you have an environment. So I would like to use Coda here, right? Which means that the instructions I generate need to be the Coda formula language. So the idea is that if we build this inside Coda so that the AI knows how to generate instructions in the Coda formula language, Coda will then run those instructions, and that's what will change your tables, add new rows, modify existing rows, change values in your control values, and so on. And we can do the same if we're dealing with Notion or if we're dealing with Airtable. But for now, I'm working on developing this so that it runs in Coda, right?
And as a super simple use case, if my SOP is when we get a new email, we add that sender to our clients table. Yeah. Then now the idea is that within Coda, the AI could understand that and could write the instructions to add a new row to the client's table. Okay.
The bit that I need to add to this picture that all of the lobsters use is the knowledge base. As I said, consists of skills and references and assets. And so the AI takes these in and says, well, skill I've been asked to execute whenever this happens is this skill here, and these are the resources and assets that it uses. Let me build the task context for that. Here's the instructions you'll need to follow. Here's the tools you'll need to use. And here's the skills that I've determined we're going to follow. And then the loop starts.
Would your skills, references, and assets, would they live in Coda as well, or would they live locally on the developer's desktop?
In my case, these would be in Coda as well.
Got it.
Everything will be pages, except you'll have a database full of tables as well. And so when this executes, it will update those tables, right? Now, so before I build this outer loop, I need to get this inner loop working, which is the AI gets an instruction from the list of tasks. It then generates an instruction to be executed in the form of CFL. And that CFL then gets executed and updates the table. So that's the first bit that I'm working on right now. And I call that CodaYoda, right? It is the little brain, the little genius who's able to take an AI prompt, generate a set of instructions in CFL, have those executed, that then make the changes to the database tables, right? And that's the demo I'm going to go and show you now. Let me see if I can. So let's go to our demonstration. Okay. In this world that we're experimenting with, I have a set of tables. These are Coda tables. I have a set of countries. I only have 3 of them here: Ireland, United Kingdom, United States. I have a set of customers, again, only 3, but each customer belongs to a country.
Right? So there's a relation, yep.
Yeah. I have a set of products that these people can order.
Yep.
And they do that by creating orders. So each order has an order date. It has a status, which can be undelivered, completed, and all of this type of stuff. And the order items are needed in order to handle what would otherwise be a many-to-many. So each order item points to the order it belongs to, the product that is being ordered, the quantity, and it computes the price. Right? I want to explain this to the AI as simply as possible. So I give it a prompt that contains, it says, your data schema is countries, name and code, customers, name, email, country, and orders. Here's your orders, which points to the customer, the order date. So I just give this tiny piece of text, and I say I also have a control that the user can access called selected country.
You don't even have to specify cardinality?
No. That's the advance that I've made over the last few days. Okay. And how that works is, if you look at the table names, they're always in plural, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So whenever it sees a column that is the singular of one of the tables, it knows country is a one-way link to the table of countries. So status is a link to a status table, right? So for example, if I look at an order, it says, oh, I have customer. That must be a link to plural customers. So it infers all of this, which means that if you're careful about how you name things, which we always are in this case, then the AI works out the relationships. Now, if the column is in plural, which is exactly the same as the name. So orders is a multi-link to the table orders. So each customer has a list of orders. Now, I've also, in the systems prompt that we'll see later, told it that these are created automatically by Coda. So when I create the link, right, from the order to the customer, it asks me, do you want the backlink made as well? You remember that? And if I say yes, it will actually create a column called orders. So Coda does this automatically for you, right? The AI has had to be told in the skills document that these links, these many-to-one links, are formulas. They are automatically updated by the system, so you can't write them. Don't be trying to keep that up to date. You only change the first link, not the second link. And I've had to explain what a control value is, saying this is something that the user can input and use it in your instructions, right? So now I give it a task. So the task prompt is not very well scripted. This is, I've deliberately been a bit more, right? It says, run through all the orders. Orders in the country. Okay. My network may be dodgy. So it says, run through all the orders for customers that are in the country selected by the user. And then for each completed order, reduce the stock quantity of each product in that order by the quantity in the order items. So I'm simply saying, take the orders that are completed and use that information to reduce the stock, the quantity in stock for those products. And then I'm saying timestamp the product record with the current date and time in last modified. And that's the prompt I give it. And then the other thing I do is I have, this is the control value. Where I select a country, right? So now I just need to switch off my little arrow thing and get it to reload. Okay. So when I run this, the products table is going to be modified. The quantity in stock right now is set to 1,000 in every case, right?
Yes.
So it should run through these, find the orders that belong to customers in Ireland, because I've selected Ireland from the list. I could select them, but I'm selecting Ireland. And when I hit go, it will go off and do that. And it has told me, this is the response from the tool. It said, I'm processing customer Olivia Smith, who's in Ireland. First order, updating the stock, and the new stock value is 901. Processing customer so-and-so, their first order, updating the stock for their pencils. The stock is now 988. I'm updating the stock for the ballpoint pens. That is now 994. I'm done. Stock updated for all completed orders in Ireland. The AI has generated the instructions to do that all by itself. And you'll see here that the stock quantities have been modified. So here's where we ran into a big technical problem, and that is that the AI is very bad at generating CFL. It doesn't see enough in its training data of the CFL, and it doesn't understand how purely functional functions work. It understands better how to write code procedurally. So if you ask what is the most used system for solving problems in business, it's not JSON, it's not JavaScript, it's not Python, it is in fact Excel. The AI has had much more experience of seeing Excel solutions, and part of Excel solutions is the script you use to make modifications, and it's called the Excel Visual Basic. So I've told it to generate Excel Visual Basic, and then I translate that because of an earlier project some 4 years ago. I had to build a translator. It simply replaces bits of this text with the CFL bits that you need to make it work. So it has generated a set of instructions using Visual Basic. I don't even have to train it as to how to do that. It knows Visual Basic, and this is the sort of Visual Basic that any VBA person would generate.
And just to clarify, the VBA is, even if you're not good at writing VBA yourself, that's what's automatically processed, written in the backend if you record a macro within an Excel.
Yes, if you go and record a macro in Excel, it actually stores it in the form of VBA. And even if you don't know VBA, you can read this set of instructions fairly intuitively.
Yeah.
So if I go to the Excel VBA dashboard, which is where we do all of this, the console is a special table that I've told the AI is there to record what you're doing, and we'll use the console as the context going forward when we get to the next level. But for now, it's just a record.
The current step, the console.
Yes, the console will always show the steps that you're currently executing, because I've told the AI, always put a print statement, tell me what you're doing.
Understood.
So the AI took the prompt that I gave it and said, here's how I would solve that in VBA. And so it's a set of for loops. So it says for each customer, the customers table filtered where the country is equal to the selected country. I didn't have to tell it how to do that. It knows, because it knows how to do VBA, and VBA handles tables and rows and columns intuitively because that's part of the model that they use. So it was able to figure out how to generate that statement. And then I had told it, make sure you print everything you're doing. So it says, I'm processing customer, and then it's the customer.name. It figured out that's what I should do. Then it says, okay, for each order that belongs to this customer on their orders column, filtered where the status is completed, because I said only do completed orders. And then it says, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I'm going to print the order I'm doing is the order, and it's using the order date as the ID because I didn't give it any other ID. If I had given it a different column with an ID, but the AI said, okay, this is the one that it's probably the most unique. And then it says for each item in that order, for the order items, go through, and it says, okay, I'm now updating the stock for this. And then here's a piece of Visual Basic trickery. You say with an object, do the following. And this can be as many instructions as you want. So it's saying with the item, with the product that belongs to this item in the order, change the stock quantity.
There's a calculation in there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's saying take the stock quantity as it exists and subtract the item quantity and set the last modified column to the current timestamp. Now, it's the same function in VBA as it is in CF. And then that's the end of that update. And then I say, okay, I print what I've just done. The new stock value is equal to the stock quantity. And then I end the loop by saying the next item, the next order, the next customer. And then when I'm done, I say, okay, I've done, and here's what I've done, and here's the selected country.
Just to clarify, what you're giving the instructions we see below in green are what are repeated up top in blue for each of these customers. So
so when it runs this set of instructions, it will generate this output here.
Understood.
And to prove that, let me clear the console and run it again. And it goes and runs it. Only this time the numbers are different because it's subtracting again.
Obviously, yep.
Now, Coda can't execute Visual Basic. I have a translator, which is a set of regex replace instructions. I replace each of these with the equivalent in CFL.
And this would now be the added benefit of saying, if I have no Coda knowledge, I wouldn't have to gain Coda knowledge because it would be of no regard to me as the human.
This dashboard is showing me stuff that the user never sees. It's all hidden below the waterline as far as users are concerned. But each instruction is numbered here and each resulting CFL comes out here, right? So if we look at instruction 8 is take the product, and then 9 and 10 is change these in it. It creates that into modify rows, the item product. In other words, the product record pointed to inside the item. Change the stock quantity to this formula here. And change the last modified to now. And then these close brackets are when it says end with, it says, close the brackets for all of this. The for loops are fairly straightforward. So instruction 4 turns into a for each. Customer orders filtered this way. Give the current value a name so we can refer to it inside the list. So we're saying name the current value as order underscore, and then run the following actions. And then boom, and at the end, it closes off those actions by putting in the 3 close brackets. So this is generated by the AI being extremely clever and impressive. And this is generated by a bunch of formulas. This is then packed into a button and executed. And when it executes, I clear the console again and say execute it, it runs it again. But under normal circumstances, it would only do it once.
Which shows us what you alluded to earlier, where you said you're now building this in Coda, but this is transferable to any no-code tool.
Yes.
Not as a template per se, but the underlying structure.
So when I finish doing this for Coda, I'm going to work on doing it for Notion and then for Airtable. However, with Notion, I don't really have to because Notion have brought out custom agents, which do a lot of this already. Coda hasn't. So this is why I'm doing this. All of what the user sees is I have a data schema, which in the future I'll generate automatically. It'll look at your tables and it'll generate it. Or I can generate this by saying, I want an order processing system. What tables do I need? And the AI will generate it. And then this is your skill. So there's a skill that says, do this, right? Now, it's a fairly silly skill. I've just made it up. And what we're doing now to test this is I'm generating 100 different skills and running them 100 times to see if it is reliable. And so far it has been.
Sorry?
Go on. I'm just saying it is very reliable at generating the right instructions, but only because I'm using VBA and not CFL.
Can you speak more about, because I think what confuses some people is, so everybody talks about skills. Now you talk about tasks, and then based on either we have AI generated instructions. Can you describe more how they all tie into each other?
Yeah. I'll go back to my previous diagram. So in the case where I build the formulas by hand, each formula is here, right? And I've handcrafted them. That's like me building my tools by hand. With the new system I've got, these steps are now being built by the AI as it goes. So this is VBA here, this is VBA here, this is VBA, VBA, this is VBA. So each of these is a set of instructions that achieve something. And so the AI is creating that list of tasks. And then when it executes each task, it says, oh, how do I actually execute this task? Write a set of instructions to be executed. I'll use VBA because I'm told that's the language to use. That gets translated into CFL and gets executed by Coda. In the future, I probably would be saying, here's what I want to do, and I'm handing it over to the MCP. Then tells Coda, update these records, add these columns, create this table, change this knowledge base. But right now, because the MCP server is in beta test, it's not terribly reliable, and it's certainly not available to everybody. I'm using this approach. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but
would it be accurate to say, to think of the skill more as a plan? This is what I want you to do, and the task then to say, okay, this is how I now actually go about doing it.
Yes. So if we go back to where I was before, where we're saying the AI is going to read a set of skills, which, as you say, is it's the higher level, it's the meta instruction, right?
Yeah, okay.
So the database that we contain has your tables, then it also has the skills, and the skills are pages, and the skills are a sort of meta set of instructions. It reads these and the schema for your tables, and it generates the first version of the context. And that is, here's the skills because you need to reference them to see what you're doing. Here's the instructions or the task list that I'm going to follow. Here's the history, which at the moment is empty, right? And then the second AI step will take that and use it to figure out, okay, here's the set of instructions I need to follow to do that. And this is where it will generate the VBA. Okay, sorry, VB.
Yeah. Fully understood. Yep.
And then that goes off to the world of Coda execution and is converted into CFL and is run. And the
inside
print
the Coda environment.
Yes, and the print statements that I told it to use will then come back in and be updated in the history.
So they're not just visualized, displayed in the console, they're also added to the history.
And I think it's fair to say that this is where we go from this is CodaYoda that I'm demonstrating here, right? But the next thing I want to generate is CodaClaw, which is this full cycle. So this bit here.
So the inner circle is what you call CodaYoda.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is CodaYoda, where it generates the VBA is executed and it generates a response, right? Inner loop is CodaYoda, and then CodaClaw will be the bigger loop. So how much of this is ready for production and can be used by my clients or can be used by the people who are looking to become the surfer person on the top of the wave? We must wait and see. This is a work in progress. Right?
Yeah.
And this is just the first step. So CodaYoda is the first step and it's working. It will take a prompt, it will take a schema, and it will actually go and do something useful. The next step then is to build the outer loop.
Yes.
And the outer loop is CodaClaw. And then the one that comes after that again is what I'm calling CodaMaker, which is where we add the MCP services that allow it to actually create the tables in the first place. And when you are able to create the tables and the columns, then I don't even need to start off with a database. I can simply say, I'm looking to build an order processing system that has the following capabilities, and it will go and generate the database tables for you. And you can even have a discussion with the AI to say, now I need a skill that defines how to accept an order from a customer. Now I need a skill that defines how to handle a case where the product wasn't delivered and is being returned to the warehouse. And the AI will help you develop those things.
What just came to me as a visual image is, because I think you're pointing to something so crucial here, where you make it graspable, this inner loop and the outer loop. But I found that that is too abstract for my mind. So what I just thought about is, it's like, where are you dropping me in when you explain this? Like, how much of the surrounding already exists? And with the inner loop, you can say there's a Coda doc and it already has these tables, and we already know what we want to achieve, and we already have a selector that the user controls. Now please do this.
Yeah.
And then in this board game, you remove a bunch of things. And then at some point you might say, okay, now I don't even have any tables yet. So dropping yourself in, you first have to create the tables, and then you have to do all of them.
Yes. Yeah.
So how populated is that board game that you're playing
At the moment, all I have is the one piece at the bottom.
Yeah.
The only thing that I have right now is this loop here at the bottom.
But what makes this so different from what we've talked about in the past, in my opinion, is that it's so clear how it ties into the bigger picture.
Yes.
It's not, oh, I have something here and I've built something over there, but it's, okay, now I'm focusing on this aspect.
So I have designed the whole set.
Exactly.
Right? But I've only implemented and demonstrated to you this first one here.
Which is absolutely fascinating.
Right? So the journey continues, and in our next workshop, I'll have the rest of it working, and we'll be able to demonstrate that.
Yes, and I think it really speaks to the surfing the wave, because that goes to surfing the wave. It's not just to say, oh, we need agents and orchestrations and handoffs between agents, but we're still trying to run a business process here. That's still the underlying goal, run a business.
Yeah.
And this is how we will actually use AI, not just to produce some fancy demo video for Instagram, but this is how we start in the inner loop and the outer loop, and this is the safe environment we need to run it in. This is very powerful.
Yeah. So to go back and to, as you say, the surfboarder, right?
Yeah.
We're still dealing with people who are managers, not developers or AI experts, but they know how to describe their standard business processes. They know where all the knowledge base is, where the documents are, and how to convert them into the MD files that are going to be used.
Yes.
They can curate the knowledge base.
Yes.
And they know how to do spreadsheets or no code, so they know how they know what tables they need, they know what logic they need, although now they can specify some of this logic using skills instead of always having to use formulas. The bit that Claude Code and that OpenClaw doesn't do is give you a UI. A truck driver delivering your water pump to a building site isn't going to be a good candidate for typing into a chat box, reading a ream of text back from the AI. They're used to having a display that has a green button saying, yes, it's delivered, a red button saying, no, I wasn't able to deliver it, and a blue button that says, now please send me to the next delivery that I have to do. And the most they might do is type in a few numbers or scan a barcode or hand over a tablet to somebody and say, sign here, please. So the UI side of things is another place where things like Coda and Notion come in very well, because they provide a mechanism for sending out a UI to everybody to say, when you're making a delivery to a building site, here's what pops up on your screen. You click this button if this is happening, you click that button if that's happening, and here's a keyboard where you have the numbers where you type in a few digits or whatever, but it's mostly click and grunt. And then behind the scenes, all of the rest of the logic is implemented and some of it is AI. And as I said, this is the bit that people need to learn because they already have this skill, they have this skill, and they have this skill.
Yes. And I love that. And if we stick with the analogy of surfing the wave, it's just saying, listen, you already are a very proficient swimmer, which is important. Even as a surfer, you need to know how to swim. They already have that.
Okay.
And now
I
additionally,
like
they need to learn how to surf.
So your surfboard is in fact AI agents and their knowledge about how to use them. Yeah.
But it means you're not obsolete in everything that you built over the last 30 years of your career.
Yeah.
But in fact, that you need that. If you only have the surfboard and don't know how to swim, it's gonna be an impressive demo, and then you're gonna fall into the water. But to do this,
and this is the reports that are coming back from management consulting is that lots of companies are doing demos, lots of companies are building proof of concepts, lots of companies are building little widgety things, because vibe coding is great at producing independent small pieces of functionality. But building something that works across your entire organization is not so easy. But if you've already automated your processes using Notion or Airtable or Coda, then the mechanism that I'm building will just slot straight in there because it's just 1/4 of what you've already got up and running and the knowledge you already have.
Which is so powerful. And also, I think one viewpoint that drives this home as well is that all of these demos, they already pretend that you're starting from complete scratch. You don't yet have any data, but now you want to build out an order system. In 99% of businesses, you don't start from scratch. You have existing data. And you're speaking to exactly that, to say you already know which data you have, and now you need to build on that data.
Exactly. But if you are going into a greenfield site where they're starting from scratch, then you say, okay, use AI to define your standard operating procedures. Explain what you do, and it will then help you define or improve your SOPs and document them. And then you can get an AI to help you implement your SOP using a no-code tool.
And for now, your tool of choice is Coda for building this for your client?
It still is Coda. Now, if you're not terribly technical and you're not great at formulas and all of that, Notion has a very good solution insofar as they have a much simpler model and it is more comfortable for people who aren't spreadsheet experts. But if you're a spreadsheet expert, you'll get very frustrated with Notion very quickly because it is limited. And you're used to, in spreadsheets, being able to do everything you want to do. You can stay with Excel, by the way. Excel has enough of the AI capabilities in there for you to continue to use Excel. But as we all know, Excel is not great at the user interface. And its idea of implementing tables still leaves you with that dreaded lookup formula that you have to use to find
a relational database.
So my practice chose Coda because we evaluated all the no-code tools according to 4 paradigms. And Coda came out way ahead on all of them. And I have a video somewhere that does that. But you could use Airtable, you could use Notion, or you could stick with Excel. You can't simply do all of this with Coda Cowork because Coda Cowork is focused on personal productivity. Sorry, Claude Cowork.
Yes.
Okay. So let me say that again for the edit. You can't get away with using Claude Cowork for this type of situation because it only gives you a personal productivity boost, not an organizational. Your auditors need something that is the standard business process implemented in a way that can be audited. I can do that by writing the code. I can do that by buying a product off the shelf, SAP, Oracle Financial, ClickUp or whatever. Or I can do it by putting these procedures together using a no-code tool like Notion, Coda, or Airtable.
And another way to think about it maybe is how easy is it to collaborate on your process with another person? As Claude Cowork, if it's just you, works fine. But if you're trying to run a process where different people in the organization touch different
a very valid point, but I'd push it even further. Collaborate assumes that they're as knowledgeable as you are and have as much authority as you do to make changes. That's not what we're doing most of the time. With standard operating procedures, I'm giving employees a set of tools that they will use. And they don't say, oh, I think I should change the formula here to do that
Yes,
instead.
they follow the process.
Explicitly, we don't want them being able to change the way a pension is calculated or the way a discount percentage is calculated. So it's not collaboration. It's, I'm going to make something that's going to be delivered, deployed to the business. And once it's deployed, everybody uses the standard process.
Yeah, great point. And the one thing that I find also incredibly intriguing about your method is because in other solutions, I might think, yeah, you're using Coda, but what do I know about Coda? And maybe Coda won't be around for another 5 years. Maybe my team won't like to use Coda. But your mechanism that you're developing here is actually tool agnostic. You're showing it in Coda. You're proving it works in Coda. But what you're teaching here is the use of AI, which if Coda is renamed or bought by Kita tomorrow, then that's what you're going to use. And if a new flavor of the week comes out, then that's where you're going to move to.
Or if somebody comes to me saying, oh, SAP have just released the or Salesforce, for example.
Exactly,
have come up with this amazing environment where we can do this and that and the other. I won't have to change much of my principles because it still comes down to the same stuff. You have your SOPs. Yes, you're now going to use Salesforce instead of something else to implement it, but it's still going to have your data in the form of tables. You're still going to have to define what your business logic is, and you're still going to have to define how the users interact with it, not just by doing chatbotting stuff, because people who are busy, the person who's flipping the hamburgers and serving them to the customer isn't interested in a chatbot, even if the chatbot is something you speak to.
Whatever it is.
It may not be. I have 15 rooms to clean. Here's my little screen, and I go click, no, okay, whatever.
The answer shall not be, you bring up such a valid point. Nobody else can describe the question like you do.
Yeah, exactly.